I'm sure you've heard the news. The great Amadeus is dead. It's a sad day for all of us, but there's still much that needs to be done. Mozart's wife Constance is looking for wealthy patrons, and given your friendship with Mozart and your recent inheritance, I figured you were a worthy candidate. You must help document his memories, retelling his life story accurately for all to read. But most importantly of all, you must seek out worthy composers to finish his Requiem in D minor. We owe it to his poor wife to have his story told, and we owe it to the world to have his final song completed. But be quick about it, others have been asked as well. Only one patron can be worthy to be called Mozart's greatest friend and earn the respect from his widow and the people of Vienna. Place the game board in the middle of the play area, adding Mozart to the Salzburg location on the map and adding all coins and story counters near the board. Next, you need to organize the cards by their different types. These blue cards are only for a solo game that we aren't setting up here, so remove these. Cards with the symbol here are the cards that each player will start the game with. There are 4 identical sets of 10 cards, each with a different symbol on them. Each player chooses one stack of starting cards and the matching board and scoring shield token. All cards will be of 2 types: memory cards, which are indicated by a gold banner here, and opus cards that have no banner on them. Each of the remaining opus and memory cards are made up of 5 levels, as indicated by the Roman numeral on the card here. Organize the cards by their period number and type, and remove 2 opus and 2 memory cards from each period for a 2-player game, 1 opus and 1 memory card from each period for a 3-player game, or if playing with 4 players, shuffle all available cards from each period together. Regardless of player count, take 1 random bonus tile from each of the 5 periods and place each of them on their matching stack of cards with the reward side down. Now to finish making up the deck, place each stack on top of each other in ascending order, so the period 1 cards are on top and the period 5 cards are on the bottom. Next, remove the period 1 bonus tile from the top of the deck and place it on the board here with the reward side up. Each player will receive bonuses at the end of the round when they meet the requirements on this tile. Finally, deal out 7 cards from the top of the deck to the highlighted spaces on the board here. Memory cards are placed to the top of each space with the cost below them, and opus cards are placed to the bottom of each space with the associated costs above them. After that's set up, grab all city and royal court tiles, deal out 1 of these to each of the highlighted spots on the board, gilded side down, placing any unused tiles to form a draw pile on their highlighted spots here. These are locations that the Mozart figure can visit throughout the game. Next, you need to set up available composers. Each composer tile will have a name written on it here, representing one of the 4 available composers in the game. Each game will feature 2 composers, and for your first game, Eibler and Stadler are recommended. So that's what I'll be setting up here by adding the pictures of the composers to the board here. But either way, grab all available tiles of the composers chosen and return the tiles from unused composers back to the box. If playing a 2 or 3 player game, some of the composer tiles will need to be removed as well, as indicated by the icons here. For example, this composer tile would only be used in a 4-player game. After removing any necessary tiles, organize the composer tiles into 5 different piles by their different numbers printed here. This number will indicate which movement each composer tile is placed under on the board. Now we're almost done with the composer tiles, but lastly, with each group of tiles, refer to the cost shown at the top of each tile here, and organize each group so that the most expensive tile is on the bottom and the cheapest one is on top. After that, place each stack of tiles on the corresponding places on the board here. It is essential that each stack of tiles is in the row of the matching composer, as we'll see why a little later. To finish the setup on the Requiem track, take a random Constance card. This card will indicate instruments that will be removed from the Requiem. If playing a 4-player game, refer to the bottom section of the card. If playing a 3-player game, refer to the bottom and middle section of the card. And if playing a 2-player game, refer to all sections of the card. But either way, cover up the instrument icons shown on the card in the matching movement. So our chosen card for a 2-player game would be set up as shown. Now with the board fully set up, each player can finish setting up their player boards. Each player places 1 Requiem marker of their color on each of the highlighted spaces here, and the white neutral marker on the top space shown here. Each player places a story counter at the 2 value of each of the 3 tracks here, and a funds marker on the 2 space on their board here. After that, the player whose hair most resembles Mozart's wig will go first. Or if you want to follow the rulebook, choose the first player randomly, and that player will receive 10 coins. The second player in clockwise order will receive 11 coins. The third player will receive 10 coins and 1 victory point, and the fourth player will receive nothing. Okay, fine, they can have 11 coins and 1 victory point. And finally, each player leaves their starting Opus card by their player board and shuffles their starting memory cards, drawing 4 cards from the top of the deck, and the game can begin with the first player. Starting with the first player and then proceeding clockwise from there, each player will take turns choosing 2 cards from their hand to play into their personal board. 1 card will be placed on the top of their board and the other to the bottom of their board in the same column. The top card will have an icon matching 1 or more of the 5 available actions that player will take, while the bottom card will show resources that player will receive at the end of the current round. Play continues this way, with players completing actions matching the cards played in their top row until all players' boards are completely filled. After that, the maintenance phase begins, with end of round bonuses being gained by all players, followed by a new round beginning. Play continues in the same way for 5 full rounds, and then scores are added up. So instead of starting at looking at the 5 actions, I want to first take a quick look at the story points, as a lot of the actions will require them in their cost. There are 3 types of story points, represented by 3 different types of counters. Each player also has 3 tracks on their player board, representing these same 3 types of story points. Many actions, such as acquiring new cards, will require story points to be paid as part of their cost. Some rewards will show a story point icon with a counter in it like this, which means the indicated number of story point counters are gained from the supply. And some rewards show the story point icon with a cube in it, like this, which means a matching story track on that player's board is moved ahead the indicated number of spaces. Story point costs show neither a cube or a counter in their cost, which means either one of the resources may be used to pay for that action in any variation. But keep in mind that each player's story track is reduced to 0 at the end of each round, while the story counters are kept in between rounds. Don't worry, this will make more sense when we look at the available actions, which we can do now. As mentioned, Lacrimosa is played over 5 rounds, and each round begins with players drawing cards until they have 4 cards in their hand. On each player's subsequent turns, they'll draw a number of cards to their hand as indicated on their player board here. The first player chooses one of their 4 cards to play to their top of the board and one to the bottom. The bottom card will only matter at the end of the round, so let's instead start by taking a look at the top card abilities. At the top of each card will be a symbol relating to one of the 5 actions players can take. The actions available are to document a memory, commission an opus, perform or sell an opus, travel, or a Requiem Action. To document a memory, choose one of the available memory cards from the top of the game board, paying any cost below the card on the board. So for this card, 2 coins and 1 story point would be paid. After paying for the memory card, that card will be added to your available cards. You can only ever have 9 memory cards, so instead of simply adding the chosen card to your deck, it will instead be added to your player board here, replacing the story card at the bottom of your board. After the card has been selected, slide all cards on the board to the right and draw 1 more card from the top of the deck. Congratulations, you have now documented a memory. Mozart's life story can soon be heard by all. The next available action is to commission an opus. Choose any opus card from the top of the main board and pay any cost on the space above it. Also pay the cost on the top of the card here, as well as gaining the benefits listed beside it. So in this example, the player completing the action would pay 2 talent story points for the cost on the top of the board, and then pay the cost on the card. In this case, another 2 talent story points would be paid, as well as 3 coins. After paying all costs on the board and the card, the bonus here would be gained, in this case 3 points, and the opus card would be added to available opuses beside that player's board. Finally, shift all cards to the right and draw 1 more from the top of the deck. Now that may seem expensive for just 1 card, and what can you do with these opuses, you may ask? Well, the next available action is to perform or sell an opus. With this action, any one of your unexhausted opuses may be performed using this action on the card, or sold using this action on the card. To perform an opus, pay any cost shown on the card here, gain the benefit listed beside it, and turn the card 90 degrees to indicate it is exhausted and can't be used again this round. You don't want to be performing the same opus too many times, or the audience might get tired of hearing it. Selling opuses work in a similar way. To sell an opus, pay any cost shown here, so 2 talent story points in this case, and gain the benefit shown here, which in this case is to gain 3 points and to increase your finance marker 2 spaces on your board. After that, the opus is sold, so get rid of it. better get commissioning some more, or this action will soon become unavailable. One final thing to note about opuses is keep in mind the picture here. This represents the type of opus. There are 4 types, and the different types will be important when we look at the Requiem track a little later. The next available action is to travel. Traveling is a way of reliving some of Mozart's past memories. To travel, move the Mozart figure any number of spaces on the board, paying any coin cost on the pathways between locations. There are 2 types of locations to travel to. Cities, as shown by rectangular tiles, and royal courts, as shown in large square tiles. After paying all associated costs on pathways, pay the journey story point cost shown on the chosen location tile. If you're visiting a city tile, finish the action by gaining the reward shown on the tile, so 2 points in this case, then place the tile by the board in a discard pile. If visiting a royal court tile, gain the benefits shown on the top of the tile here, and then add the royal court tile beside your player board. Royal court tiles have requirements on them that if achieved will score that player points at the end of the game. For example, this tile would score a player 5 points at the end of the game if they finish the game with 1 religious, 1 symphony, and 1 opera opus. But each card may only contribute to 1 bonus, so in this case I would need 2 more symphony opus cards to go towards the next tile, because this symphony opus has already been put towards the requirements for this tile. And the final action available is the Requiem action. To perform the Requiem action, choose any empty instrument icon on the Requiem that you want to be performed, and take the Requiem marker from the matching instrument on your player board, gaining the benefit listed beside it. So in this case, 1 journey point counter would be gained. Add the token to the matching instrument on one of the 5 available movements. After the movement has been chosen, you need to choose which of the 2 composers will be performing the piece. The Requiem markers are double-sided. One side shows an 8th note, referring to the top composer, and the reverse side shows 16th notes, referring to the second composer. But regardless of which composer you choose, pay the cost on the chosen composer's top tile for that movement, gaining any instant benefit shown beside it, and add the tile face down to your player board. Some tiles will show a benefit on the back, which represent an ongoing bonus that can be activated throughout the game. These tiles grant story point markers during the maintenance phase. These tiles allow you to perform the matching action a second time whenever you perform the shown action during the action phase of the game. And these tiles grant you victory points anytime you commission, perform, or sell an opus of the matching type. Now before moving on, let's take a quick look at this white neutral marker. What's that all about? Well, this marker is the bonus for choosing the top trumpet marker, and is placed in the same movement as that Requiem marker that's placed that turn. Now this neutral marker will not score you any points at the end of the game, but it can block other players and break ties when determining composer majority, which we'll take a look at during scoring. So those are the 5 actions. Throughout players' turns there are also a few free available actions as well, and these may be done as many times as a player would like. On a player's turn they may exchange 3 coins for 1 story point counter of their choice. They may also exchange 1 story point counter to receive 1 coin. And finally, if ever a player didn't want to carry out the actions on their chosen memory card, they may instead give up those actions to receive a number of coins as the round they are currently playing in. So 3 coins for the 3rd round. After all players have gone through 4 full turns and the boards are completely full, move on to the maintenance phase. If you have the right amount of cards, you should end the 4th round with 1 card left over. This will be in your starting hand the next round. Now to carry out the maintenance phase, start by moving all story counters to 0. After that, update these tracks to the icon values on each player's story cards and composer rewards. So for example, this player's board would look like this. After that, gain any payment from your position on the finance track, so 4 coins, 1 point, and 1 story counter in this case. Next, flip all city and royal court tiles on the board to their stronger gilded frame sides, and any empty spaces on the board can be dealt new tiles at this time as well, being sure to place the new tiles on the weaker side with the gilded frame side down. Next, refer to the period bonus tile, and each player receives the bonus a number of times that it was completed. So in this case, 1 point for each travel action each player completed on their turn. Next, unexhaust any used opus cards, and after that remove all memory cards from your board and shuffle them, being sure not to add the 1 card still in your hand from the round before. After that, draw 3 new cards, bringing your total hand to 4 cards, and finally remove the period bonus tile from the board and any cards from that period still in the deck, and the 4 cards furthest to the right on the board can be removed as well. The new period bonus tile is added to the board, with the top 4 cards from the deck being dealt out to the empty spaces on the board. And with that, the first player marker is passed clockwise, and the new first player can start the next round as normal. Now after the 5th round has been completed, scores are added up. Do this first by gaining any points from achieved Royal Court tiles. Next, players score points from the Requiem track. Each of the 5 movements show 2-point values. The higher value will be awarded to the composer who contributed the most to each movement, and the lower value is awarded to the composer who contributed the least, and each value is awarded to each Requiem marker. So for example, since Eibler contributed the most to the 3rd movement, each Requiem marker showing the 8th note would score 3 points, and all 16th note markers representing Stadler would only score 1 point each. White neutral markers score no points, but they can break ties for determining which composer contributed the most. And finally, each player receives 1 point for every 2 story points they have left over, including unspent story points on their tracks. So if I ended the game with this, I would score 4 points from my story track and 5 points from my unused story counters. And finally, every 3 leftover coins is worth 1 point. Add that all up, and the player with the most points wins. In the case of a tie, whoever contributed more to the Requiem wins. If there's still a tie, whoever has the most opuses wins. And if there's still a tie, no one wins, because those players have to share the victory. And that's how you play Lacrimosa. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave me a comment down below. I'll be happy to answer anything I can. But other than that, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.